Quimby Act enactments. I've coached soccer teams. We've traveled to soccer facilities that have 11 full-size soccer fields right next to the horse arena, which is all of which is attached to the town center through a bike trail, which accompanies an equestrian trail right next to it, which goes along the creek of the city. Okay, these are sorts of things that are doable. Okay, they're doable here too, and we can do them. And again, operations and maintenance to assure safe and secure environments, facilities. Okay, you don't get those things from volunteer groups in a consistent manner. The operation and maintenance of facilities is a difficult task. It needs to be managed. And as our citizens request we get this, we get these sorts of facilities, we need to have a vehicle for providing them. Trails. We want to build a regional trail system with 3 levels of links: neighborhood trails, community trails, and regional trails. Okay? Neighborhood trails connecting schools to commercial districts, public spaces to other trails which may go further. Okay? Community trails which would connect these communities to the assets that they have. We have the Arnold Rim Trail going in. It's an incredible thing. I have a vision of developing Arnold Rim Trails all over the county. Let's build loops around our communities so that people can take mountain bike rides right close to their house. They don't have to put the bike on a car. Okay? And walking trails and etc. And again, these community trails connect to the third order trails, which are the regional trails. These are the big trails: Pacific Coast Trail, Colony Coast to Crest Trail. Okay, we belong in this business here. This is what we can provide. This will attract people to come to our county, spend money, stay overnight, go out to dinner, etc. Okay? Again, these facilities, trails, are a facility as well. They need to be maintained. Somebody needs to have organized management of our trails. Alternatives for organizational structure. Okay, this is where we grounded out at our commission meetings. You guys missed all the fun, okay? Because we went through this process and we looked into all the different types of ways that recreation is managed. And lo and behold, we came out with the Recreation and Park District as being the primary function. If you read our governance chapter, you can follow along how this process went. Okay, why we determined that a Recreation and Park District is the best way to go. I don't want to bog us down here today in details. Certainly, if you have questions about these sorts of structures and you take umbrage with anything in the report, please bring it up, and today would be a good day to do that. But I'd like to focus on the Recreation and Park District as and the benefits of that, and why we feel it's the best approach. The Recreation and Park District is an entity recognized by the state. We've struggled mightily with Prop 40 and having different organizations easily recognized by the state. That's not just true with the state, it's true with other entities as well. It's true in pursuing grants. So this standalone entity has a mission, and it is recreation. And at any rate, we feel like a Recreation and Park District would be the way that we can connect our communities with things like grant funding. We can provide that sort of management that our communities need. And again, we have a single focus, which is something that many other governmental entities lack. You guys do a lot of things here. The County Department of Recreation would compete annually with libraries and Sheriff's Department and welfare and you name all your stuff. And we feel like Parks and Recreation and the management of it should be done elsewhere, so that the people can be served and that they can look to a single entity when it comes to park and recreation. Let's go to the park district. We'll ask them. They'll know. That's how we feel. This will be a regional organization that will serve as a catalyst for community-based action. We want to have a county-wide parks and recreation district. We don't want to have a collection of special districts. Should we not proceed with this sort of governance plan, I believe that what we will see is we will see community groups in different areas of our county that all want to create a special district for their little part of the county. Not that we've ever experienced this before in our county with fire districts and water districts and school districts and everything else. We want to have a single body that governs recreation in our county. It's the most effective way that every community can be served. And again, we can be the grantee for land, facilities, and funds from developers, from benefactors, from trusts, from all kinds of, from the conservancies, all kinds of people need an entity to give things to. On our agenda for tomorrow night's meeting is a trails proposal that Pat has regarding large entities such as PG&E who are willing to give up property for trails. And I can't go to the great details, I haven't heard Pat's report yet, but it's just such a thing that we need a parks district for, so that we don't bog the county administrative office or planning or whoever else with all the grind out details of this. The disadvantages of a recreation and park district. The parks district, if it's not formed correctly, can be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. It can be in the way. So the other thing is, with all these providers around, potentially the parks district could be identified as the problem when in fact it's somebody else who runs the park. Okay, we recognize this. We want to acknowledge that these things can be true, but with the focus on support and augment and partner, we feel like these things can be overcome without too much difficulty, and that our focus will be on cooperation rather than competition in regards to providing these services. And that in focusing on that, and focusing on augmenting these groups, we can eliminate a lot of this inefficiency and bureaucracy and really help get it going. Okay, the Recreation and Park District we're proposing has distinct boundaries that would include all of the unincorporated Calaveras County, outside of Ingles County, except the San Andreas Recreation and Park District. There is presently a park district in San Andreas. We want to partner and support with them. They have a member, Cliff Edson, who is one of our commissioners. If that recreation district wished to join us in this effort, they are welcome. I spoke with Benoit Lafco. He said that would not be a problem. They could even retain their existing funding mechanism and still be a part of a larger district. We are not requiring or requesting of them to join us. We welcome them if they want to join us. The Recreation and Park District would be an independent governing body comprised of 5 directors. Those directors could be appointed either by you folks or elected by voters within the district. And our district must conform to democratic safeguards such as the Brown Act, the Public Records Act, the Political Reform Act, and the Recreation and Park District Law of the State of California. Expenditure profile. Postulating an annual budget of $1.125 million, the following expenditure profile is anticipated. We look to build things. We want to administer as little as possible at the outset, but we need to go after grant funding. We need to develop an organization. We need to establish programs. But the priorities that you see here, programs is not going to be 3/4 of it. Right now, we have a lot of programs in our county. They're provided by great groups. We're not after that. We want to help them. And where there's a need, more than anything, is in capital projects. Okay. The revenue profile. New sources of funding are needed to implement the master plan with a postulated annual budget of $1.125 million. The sources of funding would include equity money and/or parkland dedications, would include grants, would include donations, sponsorships, user fees, etc. But within this hypothetical model, 77% of what we do is unmatched. Okay, funding alternatives. This is where we're moving into the financing portion of your board packet. And these funding alternatives, again, like the governance chapter, Rob brought you through this process where these alternatives were narrowed down. And what we settled on is parcel tax. And the advantage of a parcel tax is that it requires, this is an advantage, okay? This first line is not put there by mistake. It is an advantage that the supermajority vote, 66%, okay, provides buy-in from the supermajority of the voters. The citizens will have to want this. It will be our job to show them what we can do, and it will be our job to convince them that this is the best mechanism for doing it. This is representative government. This is taking a mission of Parks and Recreation, of enhancing quality of life to the voters and saying, do you want this? If you want this, you need to pay $3 a month. If you want this, it's going to be $20 a year. Whatever it turns into once we've calculated our capital improvement plans and etc. But thus far, if you look at the numbers, the amount we're asking is not going to be all that great. It's going to be great for some of the public. There's a lot of people that are out there, and we know that. But it will only happen if the public wants it. And that's essentially true for all of this. The parcel tax is dedicated exclusively for the benefit of Parks and Recreation. So whatever we come up with as a fee will be devoted entirely to Parks and Recreation. Some of the other models wouldn't be that way. There's a reasonable link between those that benefit and those that pay. Okay? It's not an inordinate, it's not a transit occupancy tax. Okay? This is a parcel tax. The people that benefit are the people who live here. They're the people who vote for the tax. They approve it, and we govern that. That's the idea. And the key factor, the funds can be used for operations and maintenance. Many of the other funding mechanisms, such as development, parkland dedication, grants you get, other things, it is incumbent for those funds to come in that you have some mechanism for ongoing operations and maintenance. You don't get that money if you don't have ongoing operations and maintenance. You simply don't get it. This is what has happened historically to our county. While communities like Lake Tahoe get massive amounts of money for their recreation development, we don't have an organizational structure that can, on an ongoing basis, operate and maintain facilities. We need an organizational structure so that we can build that. We can enhance our quality of life and our economics. We can develop things. District formation. What goes into that? The board here that's referred to. Adopt a resolution of application. LAFCO gets that resolution of application and they review it, and it is subject to their approval. They conduct the protest hearing, and following that, there is an election for voters within the proposed district boundaries, and a 2/3 vote is required for passage. Following passage, LAPCO files formal documents of district formation. This is the technical aspect of how a district is formed and how it gets paid for. Voter approval. Can special districts tax me without my consent? No. If a special district wants additional taxes, Prop 13 and state law require a 2/3 voter approval. So, in 5 years, if the district says, we didn't ask for enough money, the only way for that district to get more money, aside from pursuing grants and other things, which they'll be doing, would be to go back to the voters and ask for more. This is fundamentally important for everybody to understand. And this is not creating another governmental agency that can come in and grab your wallet, okay? This is the people saying, you know what, I'm going to open my wallet, and I'm going to help create this thing because I think it'll be good for us. And when that's created, there's representative government there. And there can be a mission and it can be achieved. Okay, master plan adoption. This is why we're here today. We need you to let us know that we're heading the way you want us to go. And there's a whole bunch of pages you didn't get in your packet because they weren't necessarily prepared for public consumption. Jim pointed out earlier that the document had for internal use on the footer. That was a typo. We should have pulled that. The documents that went public, those 2 chapters. But we have spread them around. We've used them, and it was important to know that that's a draft copy of 2 chapters of a much larger document. We're prepared to finish that and put that up for public review. But we're at a crossroads right now where we understand that the governance and finance plans especially, and how we're proceeding with this, we need to know if you approve of what we're doing. We need to know if you want us to continue to go down this road. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. We did not want to presume that we could make a plan, put it up for public review, and have it, without your approval. So that's really why we're here today. So in order to get the master plan adopted, that public review draft needs to be finalized. It needs to be published and circulated. We need to hold a public hearing similar to what we have today. We need to incorporate the input from that public hearing, and then we need to adopt the master plan. Okay? Again, the goals that we came here today with, there are 5. The first 3 have elements which will happen anyway. If we do nothing, we have what we have. Recreation will be managed in a volunteer manner. Facilities will be built in fits and starts. Community organizations will be involved. Things will happen because that's what's always happened, because we have a county full of people that like to do stuff and they want to have a good life. And so these things will happen. Will they happen in an organized manner? Will they be paid for? Will the people who want to do things make the wisest choices based on the experience of the greater whole? Will the public good be served as well as it could be? We don't feel that. We feel like we need to achieve goals 4 and 5, to make goals 1, 2, and 3, and all of the work that all of the people do to make our lives better be enhanced. And so this is for the public good. And the process by which this gets done, again, is not going to be easy. And when I speak to people, you're crazy. Why would you put anything in front of the voters right now? Nobody wants new taxes. Nobody wants more government. Are you kidding? And I look at them and I go, no. I don't think would you vote for $3 a month? to promote quality of life in your community? And almost everybody else goes, well, sure, I would, but they wouldn't. And I want to know who they are. Show me them. Let them come. Let them talk to us. Okay? Because I want to know who they are. Okay? Because we feel like this is smart, like this is good government, like this is the way our community wants to be. And we feel like this governmental agency that we propose can handle that and do a good job representing people and proceed with this process of constantly setting priorities and proceeding with achieving things that will help our communities in a variety of ways. So if everybody imagines that they won't vote for it, then eventually, nobody will act. But if you think you will vote for it, and if you think that there's enough we people around that we will vote for it, then we can get 66% of the people to approve this, and we can prove to the remaining 34% that this was a damn good idea, and that this is the way that government should work in our country and our county. So yeah, maybe we're crazy to try this. Maybe we're crazy to propose it. But when I go around now and I'm involved in things and travel and whatever, I go to a place and I see a trail built, or I see a park, and some of us have a sense of entitlement, like, well, that park's always been here. But at some point, somebody built that park. It was their idea to build the park, and they built it. And somebody maintains it, and somebody works it. And all the things that have to do with our quality of life, those are done by people. Those are a legacy of somebody who came before. And I know our whole group appreciates the legacy of all the volunteers that have done things for all these years here in our county. And we feel like we're at a point where we need to proceed with enhancing that legacy and moving on to where we can really do some good stuff. That's my presentation.
Rob, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not at this time. I hope I get a chance to say a couple of words just to justify my presence here. I'm here in a support capacity, and if you've got questions that Mason can't field, that's what I'm here for. Thanks.
Do any of the board members have any comments or questions they would like to ask? I do. Oh, did you?
I just had one process question. You got basically, I take it, the draft prepared. We're seeing part of it here today. I'm interested in the relationship between our advisory committee, essentially, and the board as we unleash the draft on the public process. And what I would hope, and it wasn't clear from the presentation or the document, whether you thought that you would release the rest of it directly to the public, or whether the rest of the draft would come through the board and that we'd take some feedback and maybe modify depending on that public feedback before it then goes out to the public for its 30-day process and final and a public hearing. I'm just sort of curious how you see the rollout on that.
There's no process that is specifically mandated for adoption of the master plan. What we put before you was simply a suggestion on how we may want to proceed with that process. Clearly, when we incorporate your input after today's session into what we're calling the public review draft, we could essentially add another step to that process, which would be submittal to the board for your review before we actually finalize the public review draft. We talked about that a little bit, and I guess our perception was that as soon as we give the board a copy of the draft plan, it essentially becomes a public review draft. So I think we're just, it's more in name different than what it would be practically. But we're happy to consider modifications to that process.
Apparently, the whole document is done, and my question would be, during the preparation and the drawing up of this document, what type of relationship or consulting did you do with the many agencies or districts that currently maintain some of the parks in the districts? And what was their involvement in crafting this document?
We have 5 commissioners, each of us from your supervisorial districts. And so much of the input comes directly from our commissioners because we have fairly intimate relationships with the providers in our communities. And so the outreach, each time we did a meeting in a particular community, we contacted the different recreation groups in that community and asked them to come to our meetings. Some did, some didn't. Additionally, with the input from the task force and the input, again, from our commissioners who are involved in their communities, we got a lot of information that way. That's how I would say we did that. And I would like to mention that this entire thing was done without paying any consultants. You use the word consult. Who did we consult with? We didn't consult with some $60,000 or $80,000 private firm that does this stuff. We've done this. Great help from Rob, good help from Jim, and our commissioners, all the commissioners that are in our group that you've appointed are tremendous and extremely helpful. I know some of them couldn't be here today, but Dean McAfee's back here, and Gina's done a fabulous job. Pat McGreevy, you guys mostly know, and Vanessa and Sid are also just. We have a good time. We talk about hard stuff, and we get through it pretty well. Anyway.
Russ, did you have anything?
Well, Mason and Gina, you want to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Dina McAfee, District 5 Parks and Rec Commissioner, and I only wanted to add to Mason's response, Supervisor, in that we did work with CCWD has recently begun attending our meetings on a regular basis, so we are able to have direct conversations with them about spaces that they own and manage and that can be used recreationally. We did review each of our respective community plans to make sure that we were in sync with directly what people in our community had contributed to the community plans. We also reviewed the COG, thank you, bicycle and pedestrian plan, and Robin Mason did meet with the planning department to make sure that we were synced up appropriately as best we could with the general plan update as well. So I think that the commission has done a really good job to make sure that we are listening not only to the voice of the people, also the volunteer recreation groups in each of our communities, as well as the special districts, which are managing recreations, as well as all of the county agencies that have an impact on this plan.
Russ, did you?
Well, I wanted to start off saying that in reading through this document, I was struck with the professionalism that is in evidence here. You keep apologizing for the fact that you didn't use any consultants. I think you should be immensely proud of it. But Rob, obviously, he's gone into the dark side on the consulting business, but he's also a dedicated volunteer too. But my hat's off to you. It's really done extremely well. It flows very well. One thing that I was reading through, you've sort of picked a figure of $10 million, and you've said very succinctly that this is just a figure. But I can't imagine that you'd need that much of a commitment, especially when you consider that Old Canyon Ranch has about $3.5 million worth of commitment for parks, facilities that they're going to have to provide, assuming that they're going to be building out. And I'm hearing discussions that they are going to start commencing development first phase of their development. So there may be some life out there in the development business after all. But and also that we all walked the trails along Little John Creek. Those trails are going to be certainly made available, or at least the pathway for the trail at no cost to anybody, because you can't build there anyway, and there certainly is a willingness on the part of the developers that have those developments that are adjacent to that to provide that as an amenity toward the people that they hope to attract to that area. So I think that you may have there may be a little bit of shock value in that figure that need not be there, in my opinion. I want to acknowledge that I read your disclaimer that it was just a figure, but it could be less. But I'm really continuing to be very supportive, and I wanted to ask Dina. I've used your skills in formatting documents and stuff before. Is this some of your work?
Well, I certainly wish that I could claim that, but no,
Rob's the guy, yeah? Okay.
Invaluable. I cannot tell you how much of the volunteer, granted all of us commissioners are appointed volunteers. Rob just stepped up to the plate, and he's just been phenomenal.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Not just enough.
Question about the figures and how we came up with it. So I think Rob can speak to the order of magnitude.
Don't tell me you threw a dart on the board and that's what you want.
Yeah. And the only numbers we had on the board were $10 million. Yeah. Certainly dollars is the issue that we will all struggle with in this process. As Mason mentioned, goals 1 through 3 are a no-brainer. We'll all support those. It's only when we have to reach to our pocketbooks that we have to really begin to think about this. You talked about the working draft of the master plan being a complete document. I've got a copy of the entire document in my hand. It approaches 200 pages, but it is not complete at this point. And the portion that we are still working on is the dollar issue, which is tied to the capital improvement program that's included in the plan, which is why we're here today requesting your direction. For the purposes of that number, in beginning this iterative approach into what it is we want to create, what do we want to accomplish, and how much is it going to cost, we've kind of gone through that do loop several times, and I see us going through that do loop several more times until we converge on a number that is all palatable to us. What we've done at this point is each of the commissioners have walked through their area of responsibility with other people that are in the know and have identified projects that they believe are critical to meeting their community's needs. Going through that process, we've developed a preliminary capital improvement plan. Right now, we've got close to 200 projects that are on that capital improvement plan. Those projects range from things like a community park up in West Point, community park down in Old Town Copperopolis, establishing Ponderosa Way as a trail for pedestrians, bicyclists, and equestrians, a tuck-in park in Doug Flat, taking use of that unused parcel. I mean, it's a whole host of things. We are not at the point yet of assigning a line item estimate to each of those projects. But if you look at the totality of it, it's pretty clear that $1 million isn't going to get you there, and it's pretty clear that $100 million is way too much. So our $10 million is really an order of magnitude estimate of what it's going to cost to implement the master plan. That was our starting point. And then we back that into, well, if that gets allocated across all the parcels in Calaveras County, what does that amount to as a parcel tax? And is that a palatable number to the taxpayers of Calaveras County? And that really is the question in front of us, and that's the question we'll pose when we go to the ballot. Is $3 a month too much to ask for having and creating a system like we're talking about? So that's where the number comes from.
You might want to talk to the sheriff's department about how much it costs to do their polling on their proposition for the jail. because they targeted it within pennies of what the traffic would bear.
Yeah, I think that's well advised, and once again, funding that survey is an issue that we're confronted with.
Questions here. That's fine. Well, I have questions, but it seems like I'm being overruled. Does the public have any comments they'd like to make?
I'm Jim Cutler. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm a retired planner. I've just relocated out of Calaveras County. Still have property in West Point, so that's what I'm representing here today. I'm the kind of people you don't want to lose. I have an assured income. I spend money freely. And we've gone to a place, Lincoln Hills specifically, because there's more recreation for us. I can play bocce ball when I want. I got our own baseball field a half mile away. I can do all those things that you can't give me. So I'm no longer here and my money's gone. That's a message that I don't think you're thinking about, and I wanted to get on the table. Obviously, I'm an advocate. I've worked with these guys, but I do have some comments and suggestions because I've lost track of where they're going. I've long said on this process that Calaveras County and Parks and Rec, by the way, Ponderosa Road is shown there in that map way back when, it is in the park business whether you like it or not, but you don't dress for success. You don't. And that's wrong. And that's what this whole thing is about. You've got to have people who are involved in the process because they generate funds. I mean, we have state park bond issues. You get the dribbles. You don't get anything on the major projects. You haven't expanded big trees forever. Every other county's standing up saying, buy some more land around our park. It's good business. You aren't doing that. You're not dressing for success. So I'm a big fan of doing something. I'm also a bureaucrat. I'm probably the only person in this room who can say that for a population of 100,000, I've got a parcel tax with Contra Costa County and the city of Walnut Creek that we got through, and it was a lot more money than you're talking about per capita, and we did it with a lot of public input. But there's a lot of pitfalls. Last time we went for a benefit assessment, we lost by 2% because we weren't smart in how we did it. So let me give you a couple of thoughts, and then I'll shut up. There's always money out there. There's always opportunities out there. If you're dressing for success, here's what you do. And some of this isn't a master plan, but I want to just go over it. Placer County has a new regional park up there because one of the farming families didn't have any heirs or didn't like the ones that they had, and they said, hey, we'll give you a park. Now, people like me are building the trails on it, but and they're making money on it because they have a grazing lease to cover the fencing, and the rancher has to put the fencing in, put the little things over, and had to build a parking lot, but they're making money on it. So that kind of thing is out there. If you had somebody who people could talk with, you'd do it. BLM's had this report, Steve, I know was involved, and maybe Tom was, where they're going to get rid of some of their land. This is a property rights issue here, folks. And they wanted to sell off some of their little parcels of land. Well, everybody who lives next to a BLM parcel, and some of you do, says, that's on your real estate listing because this is big business. You want to protect that. Well, a lot of that BLM doesn't want to deal with anymore is logical to come to local government if you were out there dealing with it. It's not paying any property tax now. But those are all possibilities for you, and they're in the master plan. But you got to have somebody who's working the game, who's playing it. Obviously, there's all sorts of developer extractions. Those kinds of things are funds to kick around, and you're not doing as good of a job there as you could. You've got an ordinance that I hate to say, it's adopted, but and it was mentioned by Mason here, is probably not as implementable as it should be. You should look at what Angel Cam's doing. Much more simple. If a developer comes in, he wants to know what it's going to cost him. You don't say, after you get your approval, go do a study, and we'll figure out what the cost of the land is. Charge him a fee. It's real simple. But anyway, there are all of these things that are out there, and if you were dressing for success, you could make it happen. So number 4, establish effective organizational structure. That's what they want some guidance on here now. I would make some suggestions, however, on the rest of the plan, because I think Steve hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of suggestions and a lot of things that are in there. I think one of the things, before it becomes a public release document, is that you need to direct your planning director, and probably your public works director, to sit down with the commission and go over the rest of the plan. Give it to them in advance, and then have a nice little meeting to discuss. because I think they'll identify the issues that are of concern to this board, and I'm a bureaucrat. You don't want any surprises. You want to know what they are, and there are a lot of things like this county has had problems with how money flows, and sometimes mistakes are made. So in the draft master plan, I think it's still in there, we told them how to pick up a pencil and how to collect the park dedication fee so it wouldn't get commingled and do all that. Well, you have a new guy here, he can probably figure out a different way that might be better under today's circumstance. But you got to have an interest-bearing separate account that the county can't take the interest off of, but because it goes for Park and Rec and does those. You have to have, so you really need to get your staff, and that's a strong recommendation I make on the rest of the plan before it's released, and it comes to Steve's question. Give it to them, sit down with them, talk with them, have a good time with it, make the changes that you think are correct, Commission, don't rubber stamp, but it will make your life a lot easier, and that's the bureaucrat in me. The comment about adoption of a plan, obviously the Commission can't final adopt any plan. Just can't. Obviously the board has to adopt that plan. It's worth thinking. Now, what kind of plan is it and that kind of thing still has to be resolved by county council and staff. It's more of an action plan than it is a master plan with legal implications. You can argue that either way, but it makes a difference on CEQA rulings and this and that. So, that's why you need your planning department there too, because they're the administrators of that. And be careful. A lot of master plans you can kind of sneak through without spending any money on them, and they don't have money to spend, and you don't have money to spend on them. Let me talk a little bit about the recommendations of the Commission and the Commission dealing with the parcel tax. Just lost a benefit tax in Contra Costa County. I was first got to give them $5,000 for the campaign. And we came within 2 percentage points, and we made a mistake. We'd have passed that sucker, $300 million. We'd have passed that sucker. But the economy was starting to soften, and we didn't make an exemption for all those developers that had lots out there that they knew they weren't going to be able to build on in the near future, and they didn't want additional money. So the builders came out against it, and boom. When times were flush, it was fine. And we lost because the builders came out against us. Cows don't go to parks. Quarries don't go to parks. So it isn't, and you have a lot of small parcels. You don't even send property tax bills to most of the small parcels you have because it isn't worth the money to do it. But if every one of those is included in the list of what's out there, you're going to have a lot of unhappy people. The fire districts have learned that. So I think the numbers need a little bit more working through. So what I'm saying is that that's what Leslie Davis, tact or not, has a lot of experience, by the way, in this kind of thing, because she was one of my planning commissioners for years and a friend, is getting a little help there on what kinds of exemptions might make sense. So once again, they're coming to you asking for direction. And what I'm saying for you to do in terms of direction is get your staff involved now to try to help them do a good job for you. Not the public, your staff. I would also make one recommendation about the financing and implementation section. The implementation section, if you look at it, is mostly a shopping list of alternatives. That isn't what a plan's about. I'd put that puppy in an appendices or whatever. And there's 3 pages. The last 3 pages is where you really have some discussion of what people have in mind. And that's what a plan does. So I would do that. But I think so that this board doesn't lose the forest here, that I would think that you might talk about among yourself and with the commissioners, working through the rest of the plan and getting all that good stuff taken care of and not having that in jeopardy while we're arguing the governance thing, and having a weakened section in that, and treating those sections basically as staff reports for the way the commission wants to go. And it's as good as any other way right now. You obviously aren't doing a good job, but you're doing a job, and the volunteers are doing a good job. But you're not performing well. And so anyway, I'm finishing up right now. I just suggest that be handled a little separately. Give guidance on it, but don't make it so embedded in the master plan that it's controversial. because that's a mistake. There's a lot of good guidance in the rest of the document that I think you'll want to agree with. But I do support them on the need for this. It's a kind of a separate thought, because you're giving power away. And in any case, if you gave power away and you look at the dollar amounts in there, you only got one professional source of staff in this county. We're not going to go out and hire an engineer and be able to let a contract if it requires that under the government code, any of these bigger jobs. That's the Public Works Department can sure help on that. And definitely the Planning Department is in this thing up to its eye teeth. So, and it ties directly to the master plan. That's why they need to get in here, because if you're going to use the trails map, the COG, for instance, well, then we're just rubber stamping that. But if you look at some of the other recommendations on the local parks, that's good information for the people that are working on the general plan now, even if it's not adopted ultimately, so that it helps them in their discussions with the community and in that plan adoption process. So I'm giving you some specific thoughts on how you should go from here to make this effort a reality. And once again, I'm a big supporter of doing something. So, thank you. Hope you any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Mr. Pope?
Welcome back.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm available by phone.
Okay, well, I have some questions.
Excellent.
Mr. Cutler brought one up on the whether it's on approved parcels or unimproved. I mean, I think that needs to, because I don't want to get in like solid waste and that.
What we used in developing these preliminary numbers was a presumption that the tax would be applied only to developed residential property.
Okay.
If the board wanted to do something else, it would expand the opportunities.
Okay.
You exempted commercial, or at least that wasn't factored in, as I understand.
The latter case, yeah. We haven't done any exemptions yet, of course. It wasn't factored in, and so that $3 a month number comes from developed residential parcels.
On the budget table 1 under financing, I guess I'm looking at things both short-term and long-term, and maybe especially the O&M cost. I'm not clear on how that dovetails with the existing parks that we already have. And again, I can maybe just the only ones I'm real familiar with are in Ebbets Pass, so I'll just use those as examples. But how would Courtright Emerson, White Pines Park, the Arnold Rim Trail fit into accessing any revenues from the income that would go to the proposed agency? And so that's not clear. That's not clear to me. It all sounds like new things versus folding in the existing parks and recreations that we now have. That seems to be excluded. So, I mean, I'm going to just ask questions and then you can get them.
I'll hit here if that's okay.
That's fine.
What clearly we're at a very much of a generalization stage here, and you're asking some pretty specific questions, and we've begun discussing those types of topics, and some of that discussion is already included in the master plan. However, a couple of different thoughts are triggered here, and one of them is the balance between capital projects and O&M. That allocation of funding is going to shift as the agency matures and as we develop facilities. The intent is that the capital expenditures will be the highest in the earlier years, and that money shift will then go to O&M as we bring more facilities into the system. So obviously now we've got very few facilities to take care of. O&M costs are very low, and that'll change over time.
I understand
Okay.
that.
Now, as far as bringing new facilities, existing facilities into the system, it really doesn't specifically account for that. This is really maintenance of either Quimby obligations for which no maintenance has been established for. Oak Canyon Ranch, I believe, falls into that category, but also the Doug Flight parcel that Mason referred to. There's dozens of those around the county, and then any new facilities that were created by the agency. What we had anticipated as a way of partnering, supporting, and augmenting existing facilities was to create essentially a local grant program and establishing a pool of funds that would be available for existing local service providers with existing facilities who have a demonstrated need for funds. And then those funds would be distributed on a basis that we really haven't come up with yet.
Okay. So this is moving forward, not incorporating what's existing.
Correct. It is not our intent in doing any of this to take over any existing stuff.
No, I understand
But we
that.
recognize 5-10 years from now, there could be struggles with maintenance that volunteers and community groups have basically given up on, and who will then be left to take care of that stuff? It'll be this proposed agency.
Well, I guess because I look at the existing energies and emotions that go into existing facilities, Feeney Park, and all your involvement, and they're going to be proponents or opponents of anything that would go forward. I couldn't find anything that incorporated existing. The other...
If you don't mind, I'd like to speak to that a little bit. As part of our discussions, we looked into establishing areas of benefit within the district, and have actually decided that a representational format would be better. Your particular district has parks. Copperopolis, if you don't live behind the right gate, you don't have parks if you're a kid. Steve's district has a dearth of parks, but a tremendous number of available, open space and forest and such. So this is all but a part of what we talked about as to how we represent the different stakeholders that exist now, and the balance of that granting of the funds to existing facilities and expanding, and we talked about developing multiple uses for the same facilities that exist presently, and we've talked about that a lot. I know from our public outreach and talking to people also that there are plenty of existing parks that are in dire need of funds right now for deferred maintenance and improvement. And I would see this district as a way of facilitating those. And I think that could be done nearly immediately once we've established the district. I would see that would be a priority that would be easy to identify.
I guess I'd be looking at how it would be done prior to, somehow I feel like it needs to be addressed either in the master plan or when we go out to the communities to address that. And I look at the number of volunteer hours that are done in Feeney and White Pines Park and Courtright Emerson. And so I guess I look at it as being critical to the success of what the end goal is prior to versus post. That's just my thought. I wasn't clear about secret review and when that's required and when that isn't required. That could just be a detail. I just felt like it was sort of glossed over. It was addressed, but we moved on quickly, and I know it can always be controversial, so I wasn't really clear on that one, and maybe our planning department could address that. The other is who owns the land, whether it's a tot lot that's in Vallecito that could become under this umbrella, or whether it's a Feeney Park. And there's short-term and long-term. I understand that. Short-term, that tot lot land is fee title to the county. Do you see that as moving over to you become landowners of these facilities? I wasn't clear on that either.
The presumption is that the special district would become the title holder.
The title holder, okay. I mean, some of it I know is preliminary, and to start, whether the board of the proposed district is appointed by the board or elected, there's a cost factor involved. It's appointed by the board, there's minimal cost to that. If it's elected, there is a cost to being elected. I felt like that should be addressed.